Hey Techno Studs! In this video, we're going to make a couple changes to our devices. But along the way, I wanted to address a few things. Number one, I wanted to address scalability. I also wanted to address manageability. And then finally, documentation. So let's jump into doing a couple configurations on our devices and talk about these few different concepts here. First, let's talk about scalability. Scalability is the concept that as your needs grow, you're able to meet those needs without drastically reworking the system and buying a bunch of new equipment. So in this case right here, when we're talking about networking, as your networking needs grow, you're able to scale that network without drastically just changing everything about that network. Maybe it's adding some devices, maybe it's a couple upgrades. And so there's different ways that we can add scalability to our network. But you need to be thinking about that when you're creating your network. So in this case right here, it could be everything from the naming convention, how you name different devices so that as your network grows, it doesn't get chaotic with how it's named, to how we have our equipment set up. So just be thinking about scalability in the long term. The other thing we need to be thinking about is manageability, and it plays into that scalability. Manageability is how easy is it that you can manage your different networks. So we're about to make a change here, and I'm going to show you an expedited way of making those changes on the network to be efficient with how you manage your devices. So just keep that in mind as well as you start creating these networks and designing these networks. Now let's get into the commands that I want to run on my devices. I have a router and 3 switches. And on those, what happens is I might not get to any one of those devices right away. Well, by default, those are going to lock up after 15 minutes. Now, that's great in a production environment. You want those machines to lock up from a security standpoint, and you have to log back into it. So that way, if ever you leave that device, in fact, 15 minutes might be a little bit long. Whenever you leave that device, you may want it to lock up faster than that. Now, the problem is that when I'm demoing, that can be really problematic because I might not get to that device right away and it might lock up in the middle of my demo. Or for you, if you're practicing on equipment, it might cause problems if it's locking up every 15 minutes. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to set an exec timeout on our SSH connections. So rather than having it 15 minutes, we're going to set it to 8 hours. So this is measured in minutes. So it's 480 minutes. So that is 8 hours that we're going to set this to. So that's the first change that we're going to make. And then second of all is we have not set the loopback addresses on our devices. So we're going to go in and we're going to set the loopback addresses on our devices. So those are the 2 commands that we're going to change. Now I'm going to assembly line this, which means is I'm going to start going through each of those devices and make the changes on each of those devices. So let's see how that's done. And this is where I'm thinking scalability and manageability, and that's why I'm going to use this assembly line method. All right, so the first thing that I need to do is connect into my devices. So I'm going to pull up a window or I'm going to create a PuTTY session to each one of those devices. All right, so I've got switch 1. I'm going to load the connections into this. All right, now this gets back to one other topic that I wanted to talk about is documentation. And I've mentioned in my other videos, what I like to do is I like to save the changes before I make the change to it. And then I like to save what I'm actually changing. And then I like to save the final, what it actually comes down to. And you can see that in here. I've saved the changes to this router. I've configured the router and I've saved the changes to it. And then I've actually got the final configuration of that. All right, in this case right here, because these are going to be fairly tame and there's not much risk with what I'm going to do, I'm going to do this all in one swoop. So I'm going to make this, I'm going to just save one file in this case right here. And I'm going to set it up ahead of time. So it's going to record all of what I have on these devices. Then it's going to record the changes that I make, and then it's going to record the configuration once again. So what I'll do is I'm going to, before I open this up, I've loaded it, I'm going to go into logging. I'm going to say printable output. I'm going to browse to my location, and we're dealing with headquarters S1. So I'm going to call this config. It's 621 today, so I'll type in 21. I am going to now save this and open this connection. All right. Ask for a password, so I'll put the password in here. All right, and then we have, now I'm into this device right here. Okay, what I need to do is position this window in an area where it's going to be convenient for me. So I'm going to place it right here. I'm going to click on this in the top left-hand corner, the icon, and say New Session. I'm going to load up the second switch here, go into the logging settings, make that same change here. I just click right on here to change the name down here, and I'm going to type in 621. All right, and then I'll open that up. I'll copy the password and get into that device. Now you can see that I'm going to do this for each one of my devices to open them up, to load them all up. All right, just went through and I opened up all of these devices now. I'm SSH'd in each one of these devices, and I can easily switch, because of the way I've set these windows up, I can easily switch between each one of these devices. So if I need to jump to one or the other, then I can do that easily. This is going to help me be able to do all of these commands real quickly. So the first thing that I want to do is, as I mentioned, I always like to grab a copy of the configuration before, just in case I never need to go back to it. So I'm going to grab a copy of it. That is this show run command. So I'm going to do a show run on this and grab a copy. And then I'm going to get to the next device, do a show run, grab a copy, and I'll do that to each one of these devices. Grabbed a copy of that. The next command that I'm going to do is I'm going to set the exec timeout on this. Now I could do a lot more than just one command at a time, but I am doing this, like to do it in just really small chunks when I'm doing it this method. And so I'm going to set the exec timeout in this case right here. I'll go to each one of these devices and set that. The next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to set my loopback address. Now, not all of these devices have a loopback address. And so, in fact, if I pull up my little cheat sheet of IP addresses here, I've set it on here's the loopback assignments right here, and I've set it on the HQ S1 switch, R1, R2, and R3, which are going to be, in the long run, those are going to be all of our layer 3 devices. So I'm only setting this on layer 3 devices. So I'm going to set the loopback for the router, and that's what this is set up for, is the router right here. So I'm going to copy this, and I'll get that set up on there. And then I'll make the change to set this up on the switch. So there's the changes for the switch. So I'll get those into there. And now I'm not going to proceed on to the next level until, or my next set of commands, until I get them all on the same page. So make sure I click and on those two. All right, now we're back to being able to run the next command right here. So I'm going to copy this, and what this is doing is it's showing me a copy. It's recording a copy of what our configuration is after we've made these changes. So I'm going to get that into here and go through. Oh, this is the copy run start. So I'm actually saving a copy of all this on here. All right, now we're going to do a show run to show the changes. My last step here would either be to exit out of the machine so the logging stops, or go in there and change the settings so I'm no longer logging what's on the machine. All right, so there you have it. So this is a quick way that you can get in and start making changes to your machines. I like to use the assembly line method when there's something simple that I need to put on a lot of different machines. It helps me really execute this quickly. So whenever you're getting into things, think about how you can make things scalable and how you can make things manageable. And that's really going to save you a lot of time in the end.